already a lot of respect actually paid to Yone with the early blue side ban from BLG, as well as the Gwen taking that away from Sheer, whereas FPX is just jungle bans in the Pantheon of the Vi so far.
Yeah, and you know, FPX, right, it was Care who had a really solid performance on the Yone, I think against Weibo, so getting a little bit of respect for that, allowing them a bit of a chance in a game that, you know, again, potentially thinking that they shouldn't have been looking so strong in. But FPX so far this season have also had those glimpses in the fire, right, where they've looked really, really impressive. And FPX are just doubling, tripling down now on that shadow focus. You know, a little bit of a, hey, you know, you left us. Let's make you pay for at least game number 1.
Varus instantly locked in for BLG, the premier ADC that was left on the table since FPX opted in for the Poppy ban. Things like Trundle are available, also the Xin, and normally whenever you see both Xin and Trundle up and available, you normally are trying to at least secure the Trundle for yourself so that even if they go for the Xin, every 2v2 for the most part becomes favorable. Also locking in the Trundle also disincentivizes the other team from locking in a tank, since we'll just subjugate them and then make that tank not feel so great in the end. I imagine that is what FPX might look for here for IYY, but I'm down to see if they're gonna look at other priorities. And you know, I stand corrected, Taliyah was still open.
Yeah, so Taliyah gets taken up. I mean, this is a trade of very powerful picks. Usually, honestly, I'd expect to see Taliyah come through first, and then, you know, okay, let's take Rumble afterwards. We're going to have a look as well and seeing about those junglers. In particular, if another immobile mid laner gets locked in, things like Jarvan have started to creep up in priority as well, especially when you have a Rumble on your side. It wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility to try and go for a hot pot combo where you just trap somebody in the equalizer, layer the Cataclysm over the top, and then really find it pretty impossible to try and play League of Legends, if I'm being completely honest with you, as that immobile carry. Now, matched on top side, matching the jungle, or at least taking the Xin Zhao side away from FPX rather by taking the Trundle, and maybe forcing a bit of a alternate path or an alternate champion here away from IYY. If they hadn't already locked in Rumble Taliyah, this is looking like an insane Lilia game. But they've already got double AP topside, and unfortunately I think they're a little bit too pigeonholed in their damage profile to go for an AP, and they're probably just going to have to match with that Xin.
Yeah, I would not mind Jarvan to lock in, because it is one of the few jungle answers that people have taken into Trundle, not because you beat him stat stick wise, but you can at least lock him into a Cataclysm and force him to say either you need to flash out of this Cataclysm or you don't get to do anything. And it also would work relatively well into Varus. However, FPX are going to drop their jungler to the second round, securing something like a Jhin. Now, selecting a Jhin into Trundle Ornn, that's bold, Rude. I'm just going to put that out there.
It is. I think, fortunately, right, they've got pretty decent front to back regardless, with Rumble Taliyah already locked in. It's not like this Jhin is the sole carry for this roster today. So there's like, yeah, Jin's probably not going to be the best tank killer, but I've got Liandry's Shed from Rumble, I've got really decent DPS from Taliyah as well, as we move later on. It's not the worst thing in the world, and I think that, you know, there are definitely elements of now needing there to be an FPX dive style comp. I think Jhin really thrives when his team goes forward and he can just sit back, curtain call over the top, and make the life of the enemy AD carry and the enemy backline quite miserable. Where he's having to kite around and dance around all of these tanks, it's not necessarily the best situation for a Jhin, but for JiaQi, you're right, he's being given a champion that gives him an opportunity to make plays as opposed to be that hyper carry. I do think that Jhin is one of those carries that you can actually alter games on if you're landing a really decent deadly flourish, or if you manage to pick somebody out with a curtain call. Those can be game altering moves.
Interesting bans that have come out of this second round. Not even looking at the Jarvan, they're trying to remove carry jungle options out of IYY's pocket. First, the Wukong. Even though Trundle should be able to beat statistically Xin in a lot of early skirmishes, they are still respecting the setup and the ease ability of 3-Talon Strike into full Taliyah burst combo that can be provided there. The Akali respect ban comes out to make sure that Knight doesn't get out of complete control in this game. FPX are going to drop their support counterpick for Jwei to the final round. Jarvan makes sense, as we called it before. This sets up the hot pot combo, but now for BLG, they get their chance to blind their support as well as their counterpick of choice of mid lane for Knight.
Yeah, I mean, you can't take an immobile mid laner, right? Like, this is now, unfortunately, you have to take something that can at least get out of a cataclysm, or make it so that that danger threat isn't particularly high. They just take the Azir. You can hop out of it using your shifting sands, and the Rel gets locked in as well. I think there's a bit of a denial as well. You see this Braum ban from FPX, maybe suggesting that they're looking for something that can engage quite heavily, while BLG just take it away from them in an instant, okay? Rel usually that big ticket blind pick that people want to go for, but is heavily countered by the Braum. So with FPX banning it, BLG say, well, we'll just have it for ourselves. That's not particularly a problem. And then FPX themselves have to go for this Alistair, get Jwei a lot of playmaking capability, and you know, this is now a secondary engage source that can follow up on the Jarvan and can start to make the life of Knight of Elk quite miserable.
Yeah. So FPX have a ton of engage methods. So do BLG. And I have to question who really wins the scaling war, because anytime I'm looking at Azir, I'm always going to give them the advantage. Anytime a team has an Ornn, the ornaments are going to give you extra stats towards the later game. But because BLG also has things like the Trundle that can combat a lot of skirmishes early on, or you even have the Varus, depending on whether this is going to be an on-hit Varus or more than likely a poke Varus, just to play out of the range of a lot of these threats from FPX. It's not like BLG are going to be pushovers in the league. It feels very well rounded. It can be good and strong at all stages of the game, whereas FPX, for them, it seems like if they don't hit BLG hard on that mid-game spike, the 1 item, 2 item center point, I feel like they just got ran over in the later stages of the game.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think that the power of a front line that is going to be present for BLG this game could definitely lead them to a slightly better chance to move later on into the series, or into the game, I should say. But at least for FPX, I would say that they've got a pretty decent time just regardless. They have got a lot of damage, and I think that the shred from a Rumble as well is something that we can definitely consider when we're looking at how well they can take out those front lines.
Well, we're going to see how these two compositions unfold and interact with each other as we get ready to hit the rift for Game 1 between BLG and FPX.
Knock up.
What about the FPX Gios? Did I only hear BLG Gios, no FPX Gios?
Hey, man. I think that may just be the situation of support right now.
Damn.
Not to be that guy, but I think we may be waiting until, you know, next series for those.
Fair enough.
Maybe next game if FPX win one, you know? What is it that Alk calls them? The fair weather fans? They'll come out.
Fair enough, fair enough. We saw a little bit of early aggressive action from BLG trying to get into the noses of FPX on the bottom side jungle towards that blue quadrant. I think they dropped a ward on the blue buff. Shadow's trying to defend, or at least start towards the top side of the map. IYY going to be matching, as both junglers will try to make their way towards the bottom side of the map.
So what I'm looking at this game is who can help mid lane the most, to be completely honest, because the Trundle should have a pretty decent time of things making the Talia's life miserable, but I also think that the Talia is really going to be the main carry here this game. See an early skirmish, but I do want to point out that Care feels like he's going to have the big shoes to fill in this series, or in this game in particular. We would have highlighted that the Jhin is not the best carry versus the tanks, and we sort of shouldered that burden to Care a little bit. So I'd like to see some effort put into that mid lane position by both sides.
On doing a nice job of creating space here for Elk to guarantee the level 2 advantage. To comment on what you were... the concern for Jhin later on in the game, I think it will come down to not only what JiaQi decides to build on this Jhin, but also what IYY builds on the Jarvan. We've seen a myriad of builds come in. Sometimes some Jarvan players will go for the Eclipse early on to try and get a little bit of extra dueling power in the early stages of the game to make that first item spike feel really good. Honestly, Rude, I think you just go Sunder Sky and Black Cleaver. I know Sunder Sky's Shojin is also really nice for ability haste, but if you can get some early armor shred on top of the natural armor shred you're getting from the Q, that's going to make the Jin's life a lot easier and might give him a little bit more flexibility when it comes to build paths, so that he doesn't have to build LDR as soon as possible, maybe delay it to a third item. it may just be having to build its second item anyways, depending on the urgency and how fast Bin comes online as a tank.
Yeah, the Black Cleaver Rush is a really solid theory for IYY. I mean, like, Jin in general, a champion that will benefit heavily from being able to look at some lower resistances more so than anything. So it's on the cards for IYY, and we'll see whether or not that's something that he looks to consider himself, as we're already getting some very early swaps up to this top side. First recalls came through, and both of our bot lanes just bit the bullet and moved into this bot side jungle to make it so that they could, moved into the top side jungle, excuse me, so that they can contest on this top side. But for the most part, you know, I'm looking at how well it is that BLG are going to get to make a move on this top side, and right now, their jungler's the one here, Shadow's around, this wave's pushing away from FPX, and if he just wants to spend a couple of seconds, cancel that first recall, he could find some good success up here.
Ends up completing that recall in the end and getting his first back-to-back on the map. Mid lane has been pretty volatile, but no junglers in sight or nearby to really take some action and try and either alleviate pressure from Care or try and gives Knight a snowball opportunity here. So the map action has been pretty quiet here, Rude. IYY returning to another second full clear, gonna end up on the bottom side of the map. Both of the bot lanes having swapped up. IYY gonna take a different path. Might try to create something here.
Yeah, and again, right, we talked about the fact that we're looking at mid lane in particular for FPX to be a bit of a carry force. I think for BLG, that's the same case.
Oh, great patience on already committed. Jwei gets the flash pulverized to put on in his place, and that's first blood going over to JiaQi.
Yeah, and just not tracking where the enemy jungler's going to be here. It's On, who is just a little bit too aggressive, costs himself his life, knows that the flashing and healing, not worth it. So ends up falling there. Really good little patience play by IYY, and now mid lane Care probably going to get flash forced here if that pillar looks good.
Shadow looks for the pillar, doesn't want to commit the flash quite yet, but now he flashes right on top of Care. The Taliyah still has his own flash, but just trying to be patient with it. Yeah. Flashing away from what was going to be the timer on that Chomp cooldown. And unfortunately, in the end for the mid laner, he tried to play it cool, but he still loses his flash in the end.
Yeah, and with no teleport as well, that's one of those situations where you should have probably just flashed early, save your life, and now you're going to... Now you will miss out on this mid wave, whereas if you'd have flashed really early, there's an opportunity for you to have stuck around, be able to stay, catch this wave. But unfortunately, Knight now with a little bit of an experience lead, a little bit of a gold lead, and it's going back to that point that we highlighted earlier on, where this mid lane is going to prove to be very crucial. Now Care with no flash up against a Trundle and up against an Azir with flash at level 6 is going to need constant shadowing, because if there's a single time that Knight just decides to go in with a shuffle, he's going to have to be fearful. That there's a jungler nearby, or that there's a support nearby, or that for some reason Ornn's now down in my lane. Like, there are so many people who can roam and provide good CC to just lock you up and take you down, that Care is going to need constant shadowing, constant vision control for the next 5 minutes. And honestly, I may even just see Care move to a side lane somewhere away from this Azir, who is going to have just such an easy time setting things up.
You know, that's the catch 2020 of playing a control mage. Once you lose that flash, else is on the map, as On and Shadow are going to try and punish Sheer. He still has a flash of his own, but he already used the equalizer to kill the wave. On commits the flash, looks for the stun. Decent damage from Elk, but the TP with Jwei will at least provide some assistance here, but he doesn't have a flash of his own, so he might have just teleported into his death, depending on how much damage the rest of BLG can get in reliably. And yeah, that just looked like a freebie going over to BLG.
Yeah, Jwei with the highs, Jwei with the lows, unfortunately there. That teleport, I think if it was a 2 versus 2, might have been okay, but unfortunately BLG overstacked the numbers, make it 3, and now they want Sheer as well.
And you know what? Because Jwei doesn't wait for the TP, this just ends up being a guaranteed dive play for BLG. Yeah, On goes down, but Sheer's gonna miss out on a big wave. Yeah. It's another kill in the hands of Elk and Shadow. BLG just making pretty nice moves on the map.
And this is that disparity between what a Jhin can do really ever and what a Varus can do. You know, let's look at the Jarvan Jhin dive on top side. Well, Bin's full HP, and that would just be a double kill for the Ornn, like without a doubt. Unfortunately, with Jwei moving down to that bot side as well, I don't even think they could have 3v1 dove, so it really is a tricky spot for FPX to find themselves in, and honestly, by BLG, it's a great little response. Previously, right, 0-2 in the game, and now they've found themselves a little bit of a purchase on this first match. Moving straight up to this top side, the second those grubs spawn, BLG are there, Shadow level 6, so can take some of the resists, make sure that somebody is a very, very squishy champion and squishy target, as it looks like FPX looking to contest. Remember, no flash on their mid laner, and Knight still with that scoop and flash available.
Yeah, the reprimands of that. Hang on. Might have sent it a little too early. Bin follows up with the call of the Forge God. Great chain of corruptions. They kill off Jwei. Looking at IYY next, who is caught in the thick of it. Shear's looking for a great flank with the equalizer, but the rest of BLG are able to scatter. Care cannot get in range. He still doesn't have a flash, so he cannot get far enough to close the distance. Seismic shove barely misses, and BLG just walk out with all 5 members alive.
Yeah, and a really solid fight to boot as well. They took down, IYY took down Jwei once again, and it's just a 2-0 plus a Herald on that top side. So BLG are going to be very happy with a couple of grubs, excuse me. Not the Herald, but there's still one left standing if they want to move back to it. Keep our eyes out for who it is that ends up sniping that one away. I can see currently IYY on the minimap, maybe looking to get the most of those. But I'm looking at how well this game's going for BLG to begin with, again, comparing the fact that FPX are a composition that probably wanted to be winning in this early game, probably wanted to use that 1 to 2 item power spike to really turn online, and unfortunately just hasn't been the case. On here with a whiffed engage, being completely honest, did not hit targets at all, but between a 3-man cataclysm, double knock-up after the fact, FPX still aren't able to turn this fight. And look at that equalizer as well. Not over the crucial targets. Always, Shia, I want you to be looking for Elk and Knight in these equalizer situations, as we now see the ramifications of some of those previous ganks into the mid lane.
And they did it right before Care's flash came off cooldown, so just precise timing from the BLG squad. They even claim a Scuttle Crab, trying to set up vision for the second dragon of the game, just to make sure that... Actually, my mistake. It looks like the dragon was never secured this game. There's been so much action, Rood, that I completely forgot that the first Drake has just been left all to its lonesome. But the fact that BLG have a composition that doesn't necessarily need to get ahead early, they've had other priorities. And look at this game.
Yeah, maybe Care did have flash, but the timing on the rel Q actually meant that he was, Care's waiting to flash the shuffle from the Azir, so he doesn't think about flashing the Q from On. And the timing of which, On goes in with his Q as we see Knight swoop in, and it means that there's actually no timer for Care's flash to be used appropriately anyway. Has to flash the rel Q to begin with instead of waiting for that shuffle, but a little bit mismatched there by Care, ends up getting taken down in the 3v1, and FPX just seeming just a little bit more lost now, not so much of an idea as to what they want to do on the map. And once again, I mean, you're getting highlighted at the bottom of your screen, but it's Shadow moving into these places, finding the majority of these fights, and in fairness to On, who's had, a really rough couple of splits, I'd say. 5 out of 5 kill participation has been a part of everything that BLG have done so far this game, and with the rel has a very real opportunity versus triple immobile carries to be a massive threat.
Oh, look at this combo. The pillar guaranteeing the call of the Forge God connects and just getting melted. My goodness, BLG top jungle, making it look so damn easy. This early game is snowballing out of control for BLG. IYY is going to try to do his best to defend some of the turret plates, but, Shadow doesn't care. He's going to get locked in the Cataclysm, but he doesn't even bother burning the flash because he has enough time to walk away. And he's going to throw out the emote as well. No,
okay, really important. Bin uses the rare Ornn E mechanic to break the terrain so that his jungler can walk out. IYY was caught there. Okay, Care gets out to safety. Nice.
I respect it. I respect the attempt. It would have looked pretty sick if you had caught Care with the Q flash on the way to leave the first wall exit.
Yeah, unfortunately not quite making it work, and, Care just about able to limp out to safety, but... look at the level disparity between these two mid laners as well. Care's level 8, about to ding 9, whereas Knight already level 10. 20 CS is not really the biggest of deals when you're looking at a double experience lead. And just everywhere it looks like BLG are starting to get the run of things versus this FPX roster. You can see Elk even stepping in front of ranged creeps so that he's denying every single CS from JiaQi. 2-0-2 on the Virus, right? 1-0-2 on this Azir. And it's a shuffle down in that bot side that you can see in the picture-in-picture that's giving this opportunity to Knight and to BLG to continue pushing this game 1 lead.
It's almost already a 4,000 gold lead at 13 minutes.
Hey, Sheer, buddy.
I'm not one to... You know,
07.
Yeah. He still has flash. He's got an equalizer. He's going to use it just to kill the wave because you might as well get some CS and gold for yourself before you eventually get wiped off the face of the rift here. And the rest of BLG continuing to snowball as fast as possible. I'm looking at FPX's roster, and I'm looking at the composition. They have their 1 items, Roodood. This is the point of the game where they would feel their strongest. But FPX just has not been given an opportunity to really set up those pieces to fight together because BLG are just breaking them apart across the map.
Yeah, and you know, when we look at the cross map as well, right, like what was happening in the meantime? We've just lost 4 people top lane. Well, because Care got chunked out and because JiaQi got chunked out, they didn't have the health bars or the wave position to move in and start forcing or even just threatening some damage onto turrets. They were just completely at a loss, and the move onto the top side was effectively free for BLG because they'd earned an advantage through those laning situations. And just looking at the player gold as well, when all 4 of the farming members of the enemy team are higher up than every single member of the enemy team, like that just shows you how dire straits this game number 1 is. And honestly, this is really good, I think, if you're a BLG fan, because this is the type of game that you're expecting to see from them. When we're looking at FPX, this is a team who is going to struggle through the entirety of Group Ascent. When you're looking at BLG and how they just beat AL yesterday, this is a team that you want to absolutely slaughter FPX. In game number 1, they've got a composition that theoretically is a little bit weaker in the early stages, but scales into oblivion. But we're 15 minutes into the game, and they're almost 5k gold ahead.
Yeah. They've done an exceptional job of playing to their strengths on some of the pieces that can make plays early on, as On and Jwei are tangoing, fighting around this river brush. Double TP's coming in. Great crash down, intercepting Sheer on the way in, and just as soon as he TP'd in, he just as soon got executed. So now FPX don't have a top laner, and this Rift Herald should be free for BLG.
That TP channel and the time it took for him to get from bot lane into the mid lane was longer than it took for him to die. Like, the time in combat was less than the time spent traveling across Summoner's Rift. He got absolutely melted. And now they'll take the Herald. They're going to look to open up tier 1 turret mid lane with 5 members strong, and the potential use of the Herald as well. They should be able to do this very easily, very quickly. But a final engage from Jwei.
I mean, Jwei gets dropped pretty darn low. They take out On of the pitcher, but the call of the Forge God from Bin is great to set up another knockup onto Jwei. And look at that shuffle from Knight, scooping up IYY over the other side of the wall. Curtain call from JiaQi will try to look for any straggler kills and revenge kills. Last curtain call bullet not going to be enough to take out Shadow, though, and FPX only managed to drop 1 member in the end, making it so that they've added up another kill to a total of 3, but BLG, they're up 6k gold, they're 11 kills in total, Roodood. I think we're just going to the next game.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I will say, right, you talk about these kills that FPX have been able to get, like, look who they're on. These are literally on the rel support who is giving their life to make sure that they can earn more from these dives, right? On starts the engage under the turret, allowing for his team to, A, have time to hit onto the turret, but also get some chip damage down onto the carries of FPX and give them space to walk forward. It is absolutely a worthwhile death for On. He had one in the bot lane where he's dying under the turret to make sure that Sheer loses out on a massive wave. So every single time that the rel's gone down this game, it's been for the benefit of the rest of the squad, and everybody else, 0 death, 0 death, 0 death, 0 death. They are absolutely chilling. They haven't had time off of the map, and they've just been present everywhere, getting gold, getting experience, and building this massive lead.
Up the carries here on the... Done for Elk, since he's got the pleasure of having a Muramana, which is a relatively cheap item spike, but not fully stacked at the Muramana part. Still a Manamune with about 220 something stacks, but Rylai's soon to be completed for Knight. Second item about to come in for Bin as well. So BLG are well ahead of the curve here, and FPX are just scrambling to find any scrap of gold that they can get. Because this is now the point of the game, Rood, where BLG have taken everything from FPX. No jungle camps belong to you. No turrets belong to you. The entire map belongs to BLG.
Yeah, I mean, in a game as well where you have already broken a tier 1 turret at 18 minutes, it's the type of game where you go to the Riot HQ and go, guys, why did we make Baron spawn at 25 minutes? Like, we're going to be sat twiddling our thumbs for so long, but IYY maybe caught pillar hits.
Oh boy, I think that pillar caught him as he was trying to EQ out. He goes down easily. Jwei trying to set up a re-engage as Sheer flashing forward alongside JiaQi. They found a big shutdown onto Elk. Maybe it could be more, but they dropped Jwei in the end. And now here comes the rest of the BLG carries ready to just pick up the pieces here as JiaQi and Sheer managed to find an escape route far away from BLG. But BLG know that they don't need to continue getting kills on FPX members. They need to progress the game, and that's a free turret in the mid lane.
Yeah, I can just see on the minimap as well, Shadow was going on an absolute journey to try and find them and try to interrupt those recalls. Instead, he's going to have to resort to clearing his camps, which, you know, no small thing either. But it is another one fight for FPX, or for BLG, excuse me. I mean, the win for FPX there is that they were able to get the shutdown onto Elk, but you look at it in the grand scale of things, and the gold lead just continues to build. And for BLG right now, the game plan becomes really, really straightforward, right? We've got an Atacon spawning on the top side in 40 seconds. Let's just make sure that we can assess and set up some sort of vision around that top side. We've got double TP, so Knight and Bin, one of them can look to push down in that bot lane, and then they can take that tier 2 turret down on the bot side. And with the Atacon at their backs, with all of the turrets in the inner circle starting to fall as well, this game should be getting wrapped up pretty darn quickly. And yes, it might take BLG to 25 minutes to try and get a Baron, so they've got the incentivized pushing capabilities so that they can just push, you know, with the ease of execution that a Baron gives you. But equally, the way FPX are playing here, they might be looking to find a little pick.
I mean, I like it. When you're down this far ahead in gold, you got to go for these cheese bush plays, and Jwei is going to punt Knight right back into JiaQi's face. Big shutdown bounty goes over to Kare's pockets, and now BLG, without their main Emperor, he's going to be gone for another 35 seconds. He has teleport, but this could be FPX's window to start the Otacon and just take it without a contest.
They have to start it, but it won't be without a contest.
Oh, another pick on is that Shadow?
Shadow's down.
Oh my god, that's big! FPX, they took out the jungler. Now there's no smite available unless On can swap to a spellbook smite. But remember, this is a weaker version, so it's going to be harder to pull off. IYY sends it, Cataclysm flash out to make sure that L can't go anywhere. FPX are turning it around. On and Bin have to salvage the fight here. On finds one onto Sheer, flashing forward before Care. He's down below 200 HP. Bin, it's got to be
in. Here comes Knight.
Here comes Knight. They stalled out the fight long enough. Can the Emperor, the golden left hand, turn it around and save BLG's game from
CC?
Gets blown up. FPX are surviving and salvaging what should have been a done and dusted game and have closed the gold lead.
And those are some massive shutdowns as well. Yes, I think Bin keeps his, but everybody else has just fed over a ton of gold into those carries of FPX. Again, look at where that gold has gone. JiaQi now 3 kills, Care now 3 kills, and he picked up the massive shutdown onto the Azir. He goes back with just a Fated Ashes, finishes off a full Liandry's. And this is just some of the creativity that I think that we get to see from FPX. I think Jwei in particular, just looking for these unique angles, playing this unique angle where they can just catch BLG out, and then Jwei once again with a flash engage takes onto Shadow, knows that Care can follow up with that seismic shove, and now they're fighting on live as well.
Oh my god, they picked off Shadow again, Rood! FPX! They're pulling off miracles one after another. The gold lead used to be 8,000, and it has now been halved in a matter of minutes.
This game is still difficult for FPX. As much as these are miracle picks and miracle plays, this is a composition that we said, you know, is going to struggle as the game gets later. Their damage on tanks is relatively reliant on Care, as, you know, looking at Sheer as well. How well can the duo of mages cut through the front line, where we know Jhin is probably going to struggle at doing that. But in particular, you know, FPX, a roster that's seemingly coming to life just in the folly of their enemies. Bin now forced to flash away on the top side.
It is kind of a bittersweet truth that while FPX is starting to now make really strong plays, it just might be unfortunately too late because the prime of this composition has kind of passed that mid-game point, but IYY is going to send it anyway with Care. They're going to look for anything that they can get. The seismic shove still clips Elk, doesn't take him out completely. Care was forced to flash. Jwei following up now, but here comes Bin with the call of the Forge God right on top. Equalizer trying to add into the hot pot. Knight trying to decide whether he wants to fight this one or not. Care surrounded now by Bin and Shadows. He's going to get chomped and bitten down to pieces. Now FPX are on the retreat. They've lost their mid laners all down to protecting JiaQi on the way out. Knight trying to pursue him with the Sand Soldier, slowing him down. They've done away with the front line, and JiaQi's got nowhere else to go. And BLG, it got a little bit messy a couple minutes ago, but they cleaned up the fight. They get the ace on the FPX, and they can now break open the base. Yeah,
look at how many people they lost as well, Raafaa. Absolutely nobody. It's a clean ace, a swift one at that. And, you know, we had a little bit of a mess around the Atacon. Knight gets caught, and we give FPX a little bit of hope. But as soon as we reset, get 5 people back out on the map, BLG, with this better team fighting composition, are able to punish the overextension from FPX. Elk finally had his flashback up and finally was able to get out of a Cataclysm and baited in Care, baited in IYY with his own flash, and then they were able to keep that fight going nice and smoothly. They got the Atacon, they got a mid lane inhibitor turret, and we'll take another look at this replay because IYY so far had been a heat-seeking missile onto Elk. The second he stepped forward, that flash out to safety actually meant that he was able to survive. And, you know, I'll say here, JiaQi missing the crucial bullet on the curtain call might have cost them finding that kill. Now, do I think that that changes the entire tide of this team fight? Probably not. But would it have been nice to be able to pick up the virus and give yourself that confidence as well? Yes, absolutely. And with the power of Trundle as well, just over his frozen domain and on that cloud tile as well, absolutely charged down JiaQi.
This game has been so strange, Rood, because at the beginning, it was a very strong and convincing snowball from BLG, and we were just kind of ready to say, okay, yeah, there's nothing that FPX can do. And, you know, a few minutes later, we've arrived to the same conclusion. It's an 8,000 gold lead in BLG, but those that did not watch the game, when they go back and see the results records, they're just going to assume, okay, yeah, BLG just stomped FPX. Watch this here live, we'll know that was for a blip. FPX was kind of styling on BLG for a moment, and whether that is a cause of concern for BLG and getting a little too complacent even when stomping a much weaker team on paper than it should be, you know, probably something that BLG just needs to take with them forward, not just in this series, but in Split 3 as a whole. When you get these leads, you can't be careless. You gotta always give the benefit of the doubt to your opponent on how they're gonna be creative and think of ways to come back in this game.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a really good exercise for both teams, I feel like, right? With FPX, they had an opportunity to potentially come back into this game, and they found that unique angle, and for BLG, that's something that they will now probably stick with them for quite a while, where Knight will walk on a top wave and go, hold on, is Jwei in this bush? Is the enemy support potentially up in this bush? You know, that's the type of thing that in a regular season, you can afford to find out.
Good learning experiences overall, and it's nice that BLG are getting these experiences now early in the split, as you said, versus, let's say, a playoffs match that has Worlds qualifications implications on the line. So FPX still doing their best to remain competitive while down 7,000 gold. The Baron has spawned, now it is past the 25-minute mark, and BLG are not really anywhere close to a Dragon Soul win condition since they had just taken their second Dragon of the game, and it's going to be, at least in total, another 8 to 10 minutes before that is even a consideration on the side of BLG. So I imagine that what we'll see is BLG using their forces to push up into the top red quadrant, make sure that FPX cannot even think about contesting them on the Baron, take this Baron, and then win one more fight decisively and end this game.
Yeah, to give us a shorter iteration as IYY gets flashed out, ain't nobody getting sold this game. It's just not happening. And BLG most likely to, just with that small chunk onto IYY, turn around, now wail away on the Baron. You can see with the Vision Observer toggling here that there is just no way in for FPX. JiaQi likely to use the curtain call to find a way in for IYY.
Decent pick on tonight, but he slides right back into the safety of the Baron pit. IYY's in there, but
Not
Shadow
quite.
secures the Baron. Curtain call bullets are flying, trying to get some decent damage into the members of BLG. On goes down, thanks to Jwei, but traded immediately back on the Sheer, and Jwei himself. Shadow picks up the double, and now they are on the hunt, pursuing JiaQi. The pillar forces him to flash. The Weaver's Wall will cut off some of the escape routes of BLG as they were trying to lock down remaining carries of FPX, but Shadow is cruising and styling. He's astro gliding on his former teammates in FPX as he doesn't give a damn about which turret he crosses. He is ensuring that care will fall, and BLG will now have the victory march to end game 1.
Yeah, and for Shadow as well, what a game number 1 up against your old team, right? This is a team that he's expected to come away out on strong terms with, but 10, 2, and 9 on the Trundle, the most kills on his team, just taking his former teammates to the slaughter, clubbing them over the head and absolutely demolishing them for game number 1. A replay of how this goes down, and honestly, this fight is about as good as you can expect for FPX when they're down so much gold. IYY, he gets into the pit. He's unfortunately not able to find the smite secure, and 32 HP, whether that's a chomp combo from Shadow, I don't think it is. I think that's just a slightly too early smite from IYY. And for FPX as well, Jwei goes in to find 1 kill, but there's just nothing to be said about this. I like that Care uses the wall to attempt to peel his AD carry, but Elk just flashes over the wall. Shadow decides, actually, you've stopped me having my fun, I'm going to kill you instead. And now with the Baron at their backs, BLG most likely to end this game in the next couple of minutes.
Yeah. I was ready for BLG to end the game right then and there, but you know what? Take your bases, get even more items and gold purchase for yourself. Jwei trying to look for a potential engage under the safety of this turret before it does eventually fall, but IYY did take a lot of poke damage from the members of BLG, and now being able to shepherd in the minion wave in the mid lane while the rest of BLG tend to the minion wave in the bot lane. This should be an eventual siege that does break open the base completely for FPX.
This is the situation where you want to look at your engage tools that FPX have drafted to try and find you a fight.
Well, they're going to find a fight, but not on their own terms here, Roodood. IYY sends in for the Cataclysm just to get blown up. Sheer falls next. Curtain call in the face of Shadow as he gets flung back with the seismic shove. Almost brings him down, but not enough to make it another death and kill for the side of FPX. Knight was trying to slide on in to see if he could catch JiaQi, maybe a little too close. The Weaver's Wall will cut him off. But Ben is so tanky that he is not going to care at all. And now the rest of BLG should be able to make short work of these Nexus towers. The teleport coming in for another reinforcement wave of BLG's mid laner as he swoops on in. The Emperor's Divide into Flash will put an end to FPX. And that is game 1 in the books. BLG lead the series.
Business as usual, it feels like, for BLG, right? With a small little hiccup that they found around that 22-minute marker where they're heading up towards the Atacon. FPX with a little bit of bite back there, but BLG, a game number 1 that honestly they would have expected, and for BLG fans, a game 1 that they should also have anticipated. Question is, can they do it again for game number 2? Because that was clinical, that was concise, that was a really solid performance by our, returning MSI team, and I think that for the most part, there's not too much more to say, but just singing the praises of the supporting pieces of BLG.
Yeah. It was an overall clinical game from BLG for the first 19 minutes, 19-20 minutes. Right before the Otacon fight, everything was pretty much picture perfect from BLG. Yeah, On gets punked by, a cheesy IYY top lane, gank setup through the bush. On will take that on the chin and be like, all right, this guy got me, I didn't expect Jarvan to, alter his path there while Shadow was continuing to full clear on the second rotation, right? But as you called out, every other death that came at the hands of On before the Otacon mishap from the side of BLG and the picks that FPX were able to find, all those deaths were the greater good. And the structure, the foundation, under the jungling tutelage of Shadow with his new tenured position, it seems promising. And the fact that this is a roster that was capable of at least defeating AL in a best of 3, for BLG fans who are hoping for a return to the crown, a return to being LPL champions, maybe this is the formula. Maybe it will be enough to work.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, looking at the credentials as well, the reason we were so hyped on FPX in split number 2 was because of the jungler who BLG now have. It's because Shadow, who was formerly on FPX just last split, was such a big carry for this FPX roster, and now he's playing on BLG, and maybe that can lead into some pretty good things for the BLG side as well. I do think, Raafaa, I'm going to call you out. You said tenured position, BLG jungle and tenured position. Hey, they cannot be
True,
they cannot be
true.
said in the same breath.
Wrong
Okay,
word. Wrong word.
but even still,
his
like.
you know,
It's very temporary job.
Yeah. Shadow would love to have a tenured position with BLG. You know, he is doing everything he can to prove that, hey guys, I am the one you're looking for. You don't need to cycle through no more partners. I can be your true love forever.
Yeah.
We'll wait and see, you know, how this split turns out, how everything begins to look for BLG a month, 2 months from now. And, you know, if they eventually do make their way to Worlds, how does BLG look on the international stage with Shadow in their lineup?
Yeah, big questions, and obviously a big, long road for BLG before they can get there. I mean, with 4 seeds, honestly, BLG are expected to be one of them, just to keep it a stack. But we get to see a little bit of a breakdown of how the game looked and how it went. I mean, you can see here that Elk just had a monster time on the Varus. I mean, it kind of went a little bit under the radar, I feel like, but his poke around objectives and poke around sieges as well was actually pretty darn incredible, and he was constantly finding the appropriate damage onto IYY, Care, or JiaQi to make their life miserable. And you can see as well, you know, looking at how well the kill participation is distributed, I talked about On having 100% early on. It's actually Elk and Shadow getting into the mixer and making the most of that, making the most of those fights, finding those kills as much as possible, or as much as the rest of their team.
Yeah. And we look back at how this composition was drafted for both sides, right? FPX opted into the Rumble to Leah. They wanted to be able to leverage these 2 solo lanes who have strong early mid-game spikes. I have to go back to that Grub fight and think, did FPX genuinely think it was a winning fight to take when Care was down flash? He couldn't enter first. Knight had prio over. Sheer was coming through with a teleport flank that, as you called out, an equalizer that, had it been placed better on the carries that were already heavily lit by the seismic shove combo that Care found, if that fight goes differently, then maybe that is one where, you know, FPX are valid in taking that fight? Or do we say, you know, FPX, you needed to just concede grubs and just wait your turn for another objective fight where everyone is not decelerated quite yet, because that fight does put them at a bit of a stinker when it comes to the gold curve, because they didn't get any kills off of that. Every member from BLG walked away.
Yeah, and that's the sort of thing that you have to consider, and that's the sort of thing that you can review in post, and hopefully coming into game number 2 is the type of thing that FPX will have amended and will look a little bit fonder on, or maybe will look at and go, this is what we should have done in future games. We will know, without mid-prio, we have to contest in this fashion, or actually Care, if you're going to look to play this fight out and tell us that we can take that fight, you need to come round the long way, or do something else, right? Like, there are plenty of options, I think, for FPX, and it's about finding what those are and how well it is that they can put those into practice as we move, not just through the rest of this series, because even with that, I mean, BLG's team fighting typically is going to be a lot stronger, but through the rest of the season as well, picking up games against teams more at their speed. I mean, looking at, you know, who they've got to play up against still, right? They've had some pretty tough opponents for the most part, but, you know, WE seems like a team that are probably in about their weight class, and if they can take some games up against them, then there's a very real possibility that there's an opportunity to find a win or two.
Yeah, there's potentially a loss of the WE magic from Split 2 based on some of the series that we've seen already from them in this past week, Roodood. So FPX, if they want to legitimately play for playoffs and look at ways that they can still be contending with the other teams, you know, BLG, obviously try your hardest in this next upcoming game that is going to be match point for BLG, but you are trying to build for series that are probably more winnable for you, and Jwei might be one of them. FPX can still, you know, take solace in the fact that they took a game off of Weibo, who is a team that on paper should also be a Worlds contending team, or a team capable of pushing to Worlds. You know, FPX can take some of those wins there.
For me, I think that when we look at FPX, it's about that series versus WE, and I think that you highlighted this really well. It's about whoever gets 7th not having to play EDG at the moment. Let's take a look at the MVP, though, for this game, and honestly, no surprises, really. Shadow here taking this one.
Absolutely instrumental in being able to set up BLG's early game for success. Constructed and manufactured a lot of those early dives, not just onto Sheer, but also onto Care, following up on those flash timers as well.